we're gonna shoot out the bullet from the enemy, as you can see, every after 2 seconds. So let's get into this. We're gonna open up the enemy script once again. Okay, so double click that to open up. And if as you can see, so in the last video we have created this chasing. Okay, if you haven't seen that, in the top right corner you can see enemy in top down. Just click on that and see the video if you haven't. So what we're gonna do, as you can see, if hit is true, basically means if the player is colliding with, overlapping with this circle. So what we're doing, we just setting the current position of the enemy equal to vector 2 dot move towards. Okay, and as you know, this function will take the position from where you want to go. Basically it will take the current position as a first argument, which is transform dot position. As you know, this is the current position of the enemy. And we as a second argument, okay, as a second argument it will take the target position, basically where you want to go. And as a second argument we have passed this player position. And the third argument, it will take the speed. We defined this speed, as you can see. Okay, so what we gonna do before we chase the enemy? Okay, before we chase the player, what are we gonna do? We're gonna check the distance between our enemy and the player comes in certain range. Okay, certain range. What we're gonna do, we're gonna stop the enemy right there and we're gonna shoot out projectile or bullet, something like this. If I select the enemy, like if the enemy over here, so it will chase us. And certain amount of distance it will get closer to player, and then he gonna stop right there. We're gonna stop right there. We're gonna stop moving the enemy towards player game object. And then what we're gonna do, we're gonna shoot out projectiles or bullet. Okay, so we're gonna go over to script once again. Before we set the current position of enemy to player position, basically chasing. Okay, so we're gonna check the distance between. So we have to use if, and we're gonna use this vector 2 dot distance. Basically this function will take two vectors, basically two position. Okay, and it will compare them. So firstly we're gonna pass the our enemy own position. So we have to pass this transform dot position, basically means the current position of the enemy. And we're gonna check our player dot position. Okay, player position, as you can see. Okay, we're gonna check if the distance between these two vectors or these two position. Okay, if it's greater than, okay, if it's greater than, we're gonna assign a retrieve distance in the top of the class, and we're gonna make it public so we can set in inspector. Okay, okay, that will be float. And we're gonna call it something like retrieve distance. Okay, retrieve distance. And by default you can set any value. I'm going to set it to something like 4f, basically 4 unit. As you can see, we have already created this field. So we're gonna remove this one, the bottom one, and we're gonna pass over here retrieve distance. Okay, and we're gonna make this curly brackets. So what we're gonna do, if the distance between our enemy position and the player position, if it's greater than retrieve distance. Okay, and by default we set 4, as you can see. If basically this will be 4 then, and but we can adjust in the inspector, so that's why we made it public. So what we're gonna do in this condition, we're gonna move. Okay, so we're gonna put this whole line of code. So control X for cut and control V for paste. So what we're doing, whenever the player and the enemy position, if it's greater than retrieve distance. Okay, basically if the enemy position and the player position, okay, if the distance between them, if it's greater than 4, as you can see in this condition, I guess this will be greater than 4. So what we're doing, we're just setting the current position of the our vector 2 dot move towards. Basically we chasing, we're setting. Oh, so it will just chase the player. And over here, if it's and as you can see, whenever the enemy comes to closer, the distance between enemy and the player position will not be retrieve distance, will not be greater than retrieve distance. That condition, what we're gonna do in that condition, we're gonna do it else condition. So we have to use else. And what we're gonna do in that condition, we're not gonna chase anymore. We're gonna stop the enemy right there, and we're gonna print out a message if it's working or not. So we have to type debug. Okay, debug dot log. And we're gonna say shoot on player. Okay, shoot on player, something like that, shoot on player, because we're gonna set something like because, sorry, because enemy is too closure, something like that. Okay, and close that off with semicolon. So if the distance between our enemy and the player position, if it's greater than retrieve distance, in only that condition the enemy will chase the player. Else what we doing, if the enemy is too closer, if the distance between our enemy and the player position, if it's not greater than retrieve distance, in that else condition what we're doing, we're just printing out the message on the console, say shoot on player because enemy is too closer. Okay, you can say whatever you want to say. So control s on your keyboard to save this and head again to unity. If we move the enemy over here and if we overlap with this circle, okay, if the overlap, so we are doing these things if the circle is overlapping with our enemy circle. Okay, and basically if the player overlapping with that enemy circle. Okay, so just wait for to compile and you will able to see that. Okay, so just wait for to compile and you will able to see that. So now as you can see retrieve distance, but you can set any value you like. So I'm gonna move the enemy over here something like that, and if I hit play and if the player collide with this circle, the enemy will chase till he comes to closer and he will stop right there and that message will pop up. Okay, so select the console first. Okay, we're gonna clear this, and if we move towards our enemy, okay, as you can see enemy is chasing, and after some time it's stops chasing as you can see, and that else condition is running as you can see shoot on pair because enemy is too closer. Okay, that message is printing out. So in certain amount of time, certain amount of distance, the enemy stop chasing the player. Okay, so what are we gonna do, instead of printing out message in the console, we're gonna shoot out projectile or bullet. Okay, so what we're gonna do, firstly we're gonna make two variables. Okay, to shoot we're gonna make two variables which will keep track of when to shoot. Okay, when to shoot, so we're gonna call, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna make a public, so we can set in inspector that will be float, and we're gonna call it something like start time shoot, start time to shoot, time to shoot, something like that, or start time. By default we're going to set it to 2 unit. Okay, 2f, and the second variable we're gonna create the time between shoot. Okay, we're gonna make it private, we don't need to make it public. Okay, so we won't able to see this variable field in the inspector, and we're gonna call it something like time between spawn or shoot, time between fire or shoot. So we're gonna call it something like time between shoot, and we're gonna not gonna set any default value and close that off with semicolon. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna go over to start function. Okay, and as you know start function calls when the game start and it just call one time. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna set the time between shoot. Okay, time between shoot to start time. Okay, time between shoot to start time, as you know start time by default we set 2 unit, as you can see 2, so this time between shoot over here will be 2 in this start. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna go over to here in the else condition, instead of printing out message. Okay, we're gonna shoot projectile. Before we shoot projectile or bullet, we're gonna check if time between shoot. Okay, time between shoot, if it's lesser than or equal to 0. Okay, 0, then what we're gonna do, we're gonna shoot. Okay, so let's suppose we're gonna print out this message, so we're gonna write debug.log to print out, and we're gonna something like enemy shoot on player, something like that, shoot on player, something like that. Okay, and close that off with semicolon. So in the start, as you can see, time between shoot will be to shoot will be start time, and start time is, as you can see, 2. So this time between shoot over here will be 2 because we directly setting it in this start. So this time between shoot will not be lesser than or equal to 0. So what we're gonna do in that condition, we're gonna subtract from our, so we gonna have to write else and make this curly brackets, and we're gonna subtract time between shoot with some amount. So time minus equal time dot delta time, so time dot delta time, so we just subtracting from our time between shoot with this amount of this amount of. So as you can see time between shoot in the start will not be lesser than or equal to 0. So in that condition what we doing, in that condition we just subtracting from our time between shoot with some amount, as you can see time between shoot minus equal time to delta time. So somehow this this time between shoot will hit 0. So what we gonna do? So it will hit 0. As you can see, time between shoot, if it's lesser than or equal to 0, so in that case what we're gonna do, we're gonna set back time between shoot. Okay, we're gonna set back time between shoot to start time. Okay, start time, as you know, start time by default we set 2. So this time between shoot over here will be again 2, and if it's 2, this condition will not run. So this else condition will not will run. So what in that condition, what we doing, we just subtracting from our time between shoot with some amount until it hits 0. Whenever it hits 0, we just firstly printing out the message in the console, as you can see, shoot on player. And then what we doing, we just setting back time between shoot to start time, which is 2. So this time between shoot time between shoot will be again 2. So it just keep looping. This if condition will, if and else condition will keep looping. Okay, so control S on your keyboard to save this and head again to Unity. We will able to see every after 2 seconds. Okay, this message will be print up, okay, in the console. Okay, in the console, firstly it will print up, then we just setting back time between shoot to stand time, which is 2, but you can adjust in the inspector, so that's why we made it public. Okay, so it's up to you how much time after you want to shoot. Okay, so we're gonna go over to Unity editor once again. Okay, once again. One second, just wait for to compile. Wait for to compile. As you can see, start time by default we set 2, and then if we hit play, okay, if we hit play, if we hit play, we will able to see that message will be popped up. Okay, every after 2 seconds, whenever we firstly we need to collide that with circle, because as you can see we are doing in hit condition. Okay, this whole statement, so that's why hit basically means if the circle is colliding with enemy. And as you can see, after some distance, the enemy just stop right there, and that, as you can see, every after 2 seconds that message shoot on player just printing up in the console. So what we're gonna do, we instead of printing out message, what we're gonna do, we're gonna shoot out bullet. Okay, firstly we need to create that bullet. Okay, bullet prefab. So I'm gonna delete from this one, from prefab folder. Okay, so what you need, go to so I'm gonna delete this one. So go to hierarchy. Okay, right click on it and go to 2D object, then sprite, select this circle or square. So I'm going to select this circle one, and we're gonna name it something like enemy bullet, something like that. Okay, and go to transform of that game object, and we're gonna set the scale in the x zero point 0.5 as well as zero point 0.5 in the y scale. And as you can see now it's pretty fine. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna add two components. Firstly we're gonna add the rigid body one for gravity, and what we're gonna do, we're gonna set this to kinematic, so it will not fall down due to gravity. And we're gonna set this collision detection to continuous, so it will continuously detect the collision. And for collision detection, we have to add the circle collider. So hit this add component and find their circle collider, and we're gonna set this is triggered to be true, basically checked. Now it's fine. So we need to make prefab of this game object, basically means copy of this game object. Okay, so create a prefab folder in the asset and select that bullet and drag it into that prefab folder. Now this enemy bullet we have turned into prefab. If we now delete from the scene view, we can just directly drag from that prefab folder to scene view, as you can see, with all of the components adding, as you can see, rigid body and circle collider. So we're gonna delete from the scene view for now, and we're gonna spawn this bullet from the enemy. Okay, from the enemy. So we're gonna delete from the scene view, and we're gonna go to enemy. We're gonna create an empty child game object, and we're gonna move it from here, and from that point we're gonna, or from that position, we're gonna shoot out the bullet. Okay, so select the enemy game object, right click on it, and go to create an empty child game object. Okay, name it something like shoot point or fire point. So I'm going to call it shoot point, something like that. Okay, and we're gonna move it over here, something like that, and we're gonna select an icon. So go to inspector, we're gonna select this one, yellow. And what we're gonna do, so to shoot out bullet, we need that bullet as well as we need this point from where we want to shoot out. So we're gonna go over to script once again, and we need those point. Okay, so So we're gonna, instead of printing out message, as you can see, we're gonna shoot out that bullet. So we have to instantiate function. Okay, we have to use this function, and this function will take the game object you want to instantiate. As you know, we're gonna instantiate that enemy bullet game object. Okay, so we need that enemy bullet game object prefab, as well as we need the position. So the instantiate function will take the second position. Basically it will take from where you want to shoot out. As a second argument it will take that. Okay, and the third argument it will take the rotation. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna comment out this for now, and we're gonna define those variable in the top of the hierarchy, sorry, in the top of the class. So we're gonna make the public, so we can set inspector, that will be game object. And as you know that enemy bullet game object is also an game object, so that's why we have to type that. And we're gonna call it something like enemy bullet prefab, something like that. So we're gonna call it something like enemy bullet. So by default this will be empty. We need to set that, we need to just drag from that prefab folder to this field, so we will have the enemy bullet. Okay, and we also need to create the transform field, basically the position from where we want to shoot out that bullet. And we're gonna set public, so we can set in the inspector. Okay, that will be transform basically position. And we're gonna call it something like shoot point. Okay, shoot point, something like that, and close that off with semicolon and control s on your keyboard to save this, and head again to unity. So those field will appear in the top of the class. Okay, enemy script, we will able to see those field. Okay, firstly we will able to see the enemy bullet game object field, which will be empty. So what we just need to drag this enemy bullet from prefab folder, drag it to that field. Okay, and the position as well. So as you can see, enemy bullet which says none, basically empty, as well as the shoot point which says none, empty. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna firstly drag this enemy bullet to that field. Now we have the bullet. So now we also have to assign this shoot point. We need to drag this shoot point field to shoot point field. Now we have the enemy bullet as well as the position. Now we can shoot out. So we're gonna go over to script once again, and we're gonna use this instantiate function. So we're gonna remove this two slashes, and we're gonna, firstly it will take the game object you want to instantiate. So we're gonna instantiate that enemy bullet, and the second argument comma, it will take the position from where you want to shoot out that bullet. So we're gonna shoot out the bullet from shoot point, as we name it. Okay, shoot point dot position we have to pass. And the third thing, it will take the rotation. So we're gonna set quaternion dot identity, basically means it's no rotation. Okay, and close that off with semicolon and control s on your keyboard to save this. Okay, and head again to unity. So that bullet will be spawned every after 2 seconds, because we're doing it that if condition, whenever the time between hits 0, it's firstly will print out the message, and no message, it will just spawn that bullet. And after that it will set itself to 2 unit or start time, as you can see. So it will just keep looping every after 2 seconds. So if we hit play now, okay, if we hit play now, and if we overlap with this circle of this enemy, that condition will run, and after 2 seconds that bullet will be spawned. Okay, so just wait for to compile. And if we comes to the circle, as you can see, the enemy stops right there. As you can see, the bullet is spawning from this point, as you can see, as we assign it. So the bullet is not moving as you seen, so we need to move that bullet to our player position. Okay, it will target the player. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna create another script for that. Okay, so go to scripts folder, just right click on it, then create then a C# script, name that to something like enemy bullet, and select that enemy bullet prefab game object. Okay, and hit this add component, and we're gonna find the script we made. So which one is enemy bullet? So we're gonna select that and hit enter. Sorry, select sorry, and select that and hit enter and double click that to open up in Visual Studio. Okay, so firstly we're gonna remove this start function, we don't need, but we're gonna use this for now. So what we're gonna do, to move the bullet to player position, we need the player position. Okay, we need the player position. So what we gonna do, if we select the player which says untag, as you can see if we go to inspector, so we're gonna assign this player as a player tag. Okay, so hit this untag, and as you can see player, so select the player one. Okay, now we have assigned it this player game object as a player tag, and after that overrides then apply all to change in the prefab as well. And we're gonna go over to script once again in this start function. As you know, start function calls in the start of the vector that will be transformed for position, as you know, and you can call it something like player position or player, and close that off with semicolon. And we're gonna go over to start function, and as you know, start function calls when the game start. So what we're gonna do, we need to get the player position. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna set the player position. So player equal to we have to use this game object. Okay, game object dot find object with tag, we have to use this, and we have to pass the tag name. Okay, as we assign it as you seen, we have assigned it player. So this function over here will find the game object with tag player. As you seen, we have assigned the player game object as a player tag, as you can see. So it will find that as you know, this transform basically is position, so that's why we have to dot. Okay, dot, we have to type, sorry, we have to type transform. As you know, transform is responsible for position. Okay, and close that off with semicolon. So now we have the position of the player in this start. As you can see, we said player equal to game object dot find object with tag. So this function over here will find the game object with tag player. As you've seen, we assigned the player game object as a player tag, and it will take the transform of that player game object. Okay, so now we have the player position. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go over to update function. As you know, update function calls every single frame, so that's why we're going to set there. So we're gonna use transform dot position. As you know, transform dot position basically means the current position, whatever this script setting on this script setting on this enemy bullet. So the transform dot position basically means the current position of the enemy bullet. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna set equal to current position of the enemy equal to vector2 dot move towards. And as you know, this function will take the current position. Okay, and second argument, it will take the target position, basically where you want to go. And third argument, it will take the speed, how much fast should you go. So we need to define those variable. Firstly, we're gonna assign the speed. Okay, before that, we're gonna pass as a first argument the current position. As you know, transform dot position basically means the current position of the enemy. And target position, so as you know, we're gonna target the player, so we have to type player dot position. And now we have the player, as you can see, the player position. So we have to type player position as a second argument, the target position. And the third thing, it will take the speed. So instead of hard coding like 5f port, we're gonna make a variable, so we can adjust in the inspector. So we're gonna go over top of the class, and we're gonna set public, so we can set an inspector that will be float. And we're gonna call it something like bullet speed, something like that. Okay, something like that. By default, I am going to set it to something like 2 unit. Let's suppose set 4 unit or 4f. So we're gonna replace these two for speed. Okay, bullet speed. And bullet speed. And we also have to multiply this with time dot delta time, basically to make frame rate independence. Okay, so that's why we have to type multiply this time dot delta time, and close that off with semicolon, and control s on your keyboard to save this. So as you can see, we are setting the current position of the player. Transform dot position means not, this is not player position, sorry. Transform dot position means basically means the current position of the enemy bullet. We are setting equal to vector2 dot dot moves towards. As you know, this function will take as a first argument the current position. As you can see, transform dot position basically means the current position of the enemy bullet, and the target position we have passed the player position, as you can see. And the third argument, it will take the speed, how much fast should you go. As you can see, we defined the speed over here in the top, so we set it public, so we can set in the inspector as well. So control s on your keyboard to save this and head again to Unity, and make sure you attach that enemy bullet script to enemy bullet prefab game object, okay, else it will not gonna work. Okay, so control s on your keyboard to save this and head again to Unity, and make sure that script is attached to play enemy bullet script, sorry, enemy bullet game object prefab. Okay, so just wait for to compile and you will able to see whenever the enemy shootout bullet. And as you know, we have attached this script to our enemy bullet. As you can see, enemy bullet is paid we set for unit by default, but you can set. So we're gonna hit this play button whenever that bullet is instantiate or respawn from that point. And that bullet, as you know, we have attached that script to that bullet, and that bullet will go towards player position with this amount of speed. Okay, now if we over collide with the circle of the enemy, and if the enemy, as you can see, whenever the player sorry, whenever the enemy shoot out bullet, the bullet is just targeting our player. Okay, as you can see. So in the next video, we're gonna what we're gonna do, we're gonna delete that we're gonna destroy that bullet, and we're gonna show some particle effect